Welcome everyone to our Conversations on Board. As always, I am Graveyard, joined by my off-screen producer Salem. He's in the chat. Make sure to say hi to Salem. He loves hearing from you guys as much as possible, even though you never see him, rarely hear him. But without further ado, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing a writer, director, producer, spelunker, caver, and all-around great guy with Jeffrey's Hell and chest in his works, the one and only. Please welcome Aaron Irons to the show.
Hey.
Hey, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good.
So do you consider yourself a caver or spelunker? What term do you prefer?
It's technically a caver. It's kind of in the normal world, people refer to us as spelunkers, but in the caver world, spelunkers are the people that cavers have to rescue from caves. So
so I mean, is it, you know, we know each other from the found footage Discord server that we were both part of, and I've seen pictures. Like, you like to go into really tight spaces in caves. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say I like it, but it's necessary sometimes to get to some really cool stuff in a cave or to get out of the cave.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
you are in the right area of the world for caves, it seems like.
Yeah, the southeast is it's known as TAG, which is Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia. And there's also caves, and there's a lot of caves in Kentucky and Mississippi and other surrounding areas, but those three states have kind of come together as like a group that share cave locations with each other, and some of the other states are like, we don't want to share anything. So it's like a whole political thing. It's it's not worth getting into. But yeah, the majority of there's 10,000 or I think 11,000 caves in Tennessee alone that have been discovered, and we find stuff all the time. And it's the same in Alabama and Georgia. Like, people are always out finding new things, and so yeah, there's tons of caves. But there's caves all over the country, but the TAG area is kind of world renowned. Like, people come from all over the world to go to some of the caves here.
Yeah, I'm an Indiana boy. I love, Mammoth Cave and stuff like that. One time I went there 2 years ago with my family, and they're like, you can go and do this cave tour where you crawl around your bellies underneath stuff. I'm look at my wife. She goes, no. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
No. We honestly talking about caves because, well, both of your movies that I have seen deal with caves. Let's get a little bit to know about you, Aaron, and everything about you, and we'll talk about your movies without spoilers for everything. So, obviously this is your second feature film that you've created, right? With Jeffrey's Hell. So what got you into movie making to do stuff like Chess and Jeffrey's Hell?
Well, it was just something I always wanted to do. I never really thought about doing it until around 2018. I just had this idea and was like, let's just try to do this. And I had a lot of friends that were actors, and I've helped in the past. I've worked on other people's projects and movies and stuff, like doing sound and just random PA stuff. So basically I was like calling in favors and be like, hey, remember that time I did this? Come in and help me with this. So I had a lot of people helping me with the initial process of doing chess. And the whole thing, and the idea that I'm still going to continue with in future films is making movies about the stories of where I grew up in East Tennessee, which are just like some of the craziest stories. I tell people about it and they're like, it's not real, it's not true. And I mean, for the most part they are. And Chest was based on one of those stories about the mysterious box that was found in a cave that was locked up in chains and locks and found by hunters and stuff like that. So for years when I was a kid, I always wondered about that story. And I used to actually go out into the woods with my friends, and we would try to find this cave and see what was in the box, and we never found it. But my as I decided to make a movie, I was like, well, let's develop a story around this. So the story of chest and the people going to look for the chest. It's kind of like it's like the main character is sort of myself, written as myself to find that box. And, then I developed the whole story of chest around that. And, of course, there's a cave in that, and there's not a lot of cave in chest, but when people were watching chest, that was the part where people were like, "Oh my god, I was so terrified," and I was like, "There's barely any cave in this." So, so I immediately had the idea. It's like the next movie I make, I got to have a lot more cave, and I didn't want to make like a direct sequel to Chest, like with the main story, because found footage, everybody dies most of the
Right.
time.
Right.
So I was like, how can I make a sequel but also utilize the same people that I have that are willing to help me? And that's how I came up with the mockumentary of me trying to do a documentary about the area known as Jeffrey's Hell in East Tennessee, which is back in the 1900s. There was a guy went missing there. He was out hunting, and a wildfire broke out in the woods there, and his dogs ran off into the fire. And he said he would go into hell after those dogs. And there's another part of the story where they found the remains of the dogs in a cave nearby.
Okay.
But they never found Ebenezer Jeffrey. I keep calling him Jeffrey, but his name is Ebenezer Jeffrey, and that's a common thing back in East Tennessee. Like, oh yeah, old Jeffrey, he went up in those woods. But I mess that up a lot. But it's Ebenezer Jeffrey. He's a real guy. So the sequel, Jeffrey's Hell, is me investigating that legend, and then I get in deep to the lore and the legend through some correspondence that I do online, and I end up finding the cave, and then bad things happen. So that was my way of making a sequel without actually making a sequel.
Right. And like I said, with that, I don't want to spoil anything for Jeffrey's Hell, because I want people to see it when it comes out and just embrace it for the movie it is. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot more cave, as you point out. Now, with where you're at, did you find it difficult shooting in the cave? Were there any scenes particularly hard to shoot in the cave?
It's really hard to shoot in caves. That's why the majority of movies that you see taking place in caves are often like The Descent is the one that everybody always references,
Right.
because it's probably one of the most prolific cave movies out there. And that was all probably 99% done in a studio, because to get the quality of the shots and the the audio and everything like that, like you just can't do it in that environment because it's so rigorous, and it's a very volatile environment, especially for like high-end cameras and stuff. So when I was filming Jeffrey's Hell, it's mostly shot on just body cameras, and the audio, I try to capture as much movement of my body through the cave without the dialogue, and a lot of the dialogue was done after the fact.
So you ADR'd it essentially?
Yeah, because I'm behind the camera most of the time, so what I'm doing and saying is not important, and at the time I'm just kind of acting it out as I go. But I did actually do a lot of the ADR in the cave. I would go back and just with a recorder, because it's it's a very great sound stage because it's totally silent. There's you don't have to worry about dogs barking, planes flying. Like it's just So so the ADR was actually done in the cave itself.
That's pretty interesting. So was it really, especially with the cave scenes, for the most part, obviously there's some scenes that couldn't just be you in it, but was it just you for the most part during those scenes?
Yeah. There's maybe a couple, like the well, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but there's one scene in particular in the water, where something comes up out of the water,
Right.
And someone else was filming that, and I'm actually the person in the suit
Okay.
water for that, because I was like, if nobody's going to want to do this, and so I'm just going to do it myself. So, but I like when I went into the caves to film. A lot of times, I would just when I would go on regular cave trips, I would bring my cameras with me
Mhm.
on every cave trip and just film the whole time. And I would let everybody else just go ahead or go to another part of the cave, and I would stay back and film whatever I needed to that time. And I just kind of started piecing it together from multiple locations. There's about 6 different caves uh, that it was shot in, and luckily they all look pretty much the same, so they kind of flow together into
Right.
one thing. But yeah, majority of the time I was actually by myself. Um, Sometimes I would have my wife with me, but she would just, you know, it's funny because I'm not an actor at all, and I just cannot act in front of other people. Like if in a
Mhm.
normal movie setting, like I would never be able to do that. It's just like people staring at you and looking at you.
Right.
So I would be like, all right, just go over here for a while. I'm gonna go over here, and if I start screaming or yelling, like don't worry, like I would have like a safe word. If if I'm actually hurt, I'm gonna start yelling something,
Right.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, for you saying you're not an actor, I think, especially in Jeffrey's Hell, you did really well because you are the person in Jeffrey's Hell. And so, what was that like being different for you from Chas really being behind the camera to Jeffrey's Hell being just pretty much one of the sole people in front of the camera?
It was actually kind of a relief, to be honest, because directing a film and with chess, I was directing, I was doing uh set design, I was
Mhm.
doing producer work, I was doing everything. So like it was just this, like I kind of have PTSD from those shoots. Like we had a shoot in East Tennessee that was like 2 weeks long, and I barely have any memory from that because it was like wake up at 4 a.m., go to bed at 3, and
Mhm.
like yeah, it was rough. So like the freedom I had with Jeffrey's Hell was that I could go anytime. Like there were times I would be editing and I would be like, all right, I need a shot, like I'm missing something, and I would just drive to a cave, go in there and film it, and then come back and put it together. So like there was some freedom there.
Mhm.
So it felt a little different.
That's yeah, and that really shows. So, I guess the kind of the question is then, what would you say was the most non-cave related difficult shot you had to pull off that you've done so far?
Um, in Jeffrey's Hell, I mean, the majority of the difficult shots were all in the caves, but uh, just the interview stuff at the beginning was pretty tight because I think I shot all of the stuff in like a week.
Hmm.
Um, so it's coordinating with everyone, and like I would show up, me with a camera and all the audio and everything, and I would film those interview segments, um, just me and that person. And then some days I would do 2 in a day. So that stint of filming the interviews was pretty rough.
I mean, was that I have a question for that. Was that a working gumball machine that was there in the shots?
Oh yeah, Josh's house. Yeah,
Yeah.
he has that in his house, but I've been over there so many times and I've never used it. So I assume it works, but I always forget it's there.
Yeah, I have to ask. I like to see stuff like that and seeing and everything too. Um, and so, like I said, without spoiling anything, for me, Jeffrey's Hell gave it just was to me an homage to As Above, So Below. Yeah,
There's some
you
definite there's some definite influence there because I love that movie. I think it's great. I've always wanted to go to the catacombs.
yeah.
Yeah, in Paris, and the fact that they actually made a movie there was just wonderful. And so the main thing that people will notice with Jeffrey's Hell is the kind of descent into madness of where you don't know if what I'm seeing is real or if it's just in my head. And there was definitely some moments where I thought about as above, so below, like all those random weird things that just started popping up that were manifestations of the cave and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a definite influence from that.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see this being a Dante's Inferno inspired story too, with Jeffrey's Hell.
Yeah, and somebody over here in the chat asked about a third part.
Yeah.
And I do have an idea for the third part, and the DVD that I'm making for Jeffrey's Hell, there's some little Easter eggs in the DVD that hint towards what's going to happen in the third part. And in the movie, there's mention of like the FBI involvement and something called Project Greenhouse. And so the third part's going to investigate more of that. Like, what is Project Greenhouse? What is being covered up with this cave? And like, are there other caves? Are there other things that people are watching? And so there's going to be I think the third part's going to be kind of a bigger budget deal. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but I'm working on that right now.
Will Hunter Redfern come back for the third part?
I don't know. I like Hunter. He's a good. I have to figure that out because the Ranger is. Does he know something? I don't know.
Oh, right. So that's one. He just alludes to why the FBI is involved with this.
Yeah.
You know, Teef loves Easter eggs. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to figure out a way to get everybody back because it's really fun working with all these people. So it's good.
Yeah, and I think it really shows with your movie. And when's the DVD out for Jeffrey's Hell? We'll talk about that if you want to talk about it now too as a pluggable when it comes out.
Yeah, I'm working on the bonus features. It's going to have a lot of behind the scenes, a lot more of the cave footage and just kind of the making of it, and just the print. There's a lot of printed materials that are going to come with it. That are little allusions to the next movie, but I'm hoping to have that done soon and available by October, if not sooner. So that'll probably be the first time that it'll be publicly available. Everybody asks about streaming, but I'm doing the festival circuit right now, so I'm waiting to find out about a bunch of festivals that are happening in September and October. But I'm gonna try to get the balls rolling on the streaming sooner than later, just because it takes a while now with all the backlogs of films that are out there.
Yeah, it's the influx has just grown tremendously, especially in the independent horror. I feel like, and I'm excited for it. You'll have to let me know too when it's available to do it, just because I have to support everyone that comes on the show. I really enjoy Jeffrey's Hell, and I can't wait for it to have a physical copy because I'm an old guy. I like physical copies of things. I personally would love a VHS copy.
That's a possibility. I need to talk to some people and figure out how they did that, because it seems like everybody's doing that now. And I still love VHS. I have a big VHS collection, and it's my preferred way to watch movies, especially movies that were made during the time of VHS, where like movies from the 70s and 80s and early 90s. Like, there's nothing like that grit and grain and warble of a VHS.
Oh yeah. My co-host and I, we collect laser discs, so we like to go that school. If it wasn't $10,000 for a laser disc press, I might have one, and need to be like solid concrete because it's just so freaking heavy. I'd do that for sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, and this is why I like Chess and Jeff Hills, because it's talking about lore and stories that you were told growing up, and especially East Tennessee. And that's why I love indie horror, because it's a way to tell these stories that you heard growing up and just bring it to a more public light. Do you have any other stories that aren't currently in the works that you'd love to touch in the area you're from?
Oh yeah, there's tons of them. The like there's some stuff in chess that are alluded to about like the can't remember, it's been a while since I've even seen chess, but the bartender in chess originally he talked about a lot more. I had to cut a lot of stuff out of that scene, but like there was a story of a guy, like my mom told me this story where there was a kid that got rabies when she was a little girl, and when they would walk to school, the parents of the kid with rabies didn't really know what to do because they were kind of cut off from a lot of stuff. Like they had rabies vaccines back then, but it wasn't something that people up in uh, the hills of Appalachia were able to get. And they just locked this kid up in a shed behind their house, and they would walk to school and they would peek through the cracks at him, and he was just like she said he was like a zombie, would just like attack the walls and like shit like that, like
Right.
weird. And like I've seen weird things up in the mountains, like I've seen feral people.
Yep.
What I guess are feral people. I remember making direct eye contact with a strange man covered in pelts across the river, and was just like, well, time to get out of here, and there's a lot of stuff. I did find out about like I like to explore a lot of abandoned houses and stuff like that, especially around that area. And one of the houses that I went to about 8 years ago, I went there with my mom, who's also like really into that kind of stuff. And I have these videos of us exploring it. It's just the craziest house. It looks like it's a huge house, and there's just all these. It looks like people just left, and there were the birth certificates of all the people in the house were laid out on the table of the house and in the kitchen. And then there were like books on, there was like all these religious books, and then like all these books about like quantum mechanics and Nietzsche, and it was just the craziest shit, and like broken musical instruments everywhere. And I never thought anything about it after that until recently. I found out that the previous owners just disappeared. Like they just up and left. And some realtor got access to the house, and then and then she let her son stay there because he didn't have anywhere to live, and he disappeared. Like I looked him up. He's like an actual like FBI missing person. So
wow.
I thought about like the next project I do, like trying to investigate what the hell happened to these people and try to get access to spend the night in that house. So that might be my next deal.
So basically, that just happened, right?
Yeah, I think I talked about that in the Discord.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's been messing with me, so I need to do something with it.
Oh man, that just reminds me. Couple people and I from Horror Dads are doing we're shooting a TV pilot. We're gonna start doing something called States Unknown. We're gonna go to each state and investigate 5 real life paranormal weird things that happened. We're always looking for people to share stories with, and when we get down to Tennessee, we'd love to have you on as a guest interviewer or investigator if you'd like to do
that. That'd be great.
Yes, let's make that happen. I'll add you to our list then. Because sounds like you had some wild stories that we'd love to investigate down there.
Yeah, I've got an uncle back there that's where the source of most of my stories came from. That guy was, I thought he was full of shit my whole life, but it turns out some of his tall tales are pretty true.
That's crazy. Here's a question though we have from Chief. If you had a bigger budget, what would you have done differently in your movies?
Oh, that's a good question. I think just more action, gore, just special effects, practical special effects, and things like that. And probably pay people more. I don't know.
Wait a few minutes and try setting up again. You can also
Hold on a minute. My stupid Google device started talking to me.
You said the magic words, I guess.
Yeah.
You heard money. Oh man. I mean, like I said, I'm excited for what's coming next for you. And just like I said, I just binge watched it, and my wife watches the stuff with me. She goes, okay, yeah, I can get behind this. She was not always a fan of indie horror, but doing this show, she's really come to change her mind on it. And why do you think we've had such a big resurgence of indie horror in the past, let's say 5-ish years?
I think it's more accessible these days with the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Like not only people can make movies on their phones, but high-end cameras are often cheaper than phones these days. And being able, and the software and it's just so easier to be able to do the technical side of it. But also in the distribution world, there's more avenues to get your film out there, where before you would have to go through probably some kind of toxic distribution deal. And like, there's just always been these gatekeepers that are like, you have to do this, you have to pay this, you have to do all these things. And I think people eventually were like, I don't have to do fucking any of that shit. Like,
right.
Like, I'm just gonna, all you have to do is make a movie. Like, just have an idea, start filming it, and figure it out as you go. And a lot of people are doing that. And the Hollywood model is just kind of falling apart, and for a good reason, because it's just bloated and unnecessary, and people are just tired of it.
Yeah. I can say in the year I've been in the indie horror world, yes, there's some toxic people in this, but for general community, I have found just been so supportive of everything that you do. And it's a breath of fresh air to see creatives come together for the same common goal.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is the communities are very important, because the found footage community, like, found footage filmmakers wouldn't exist without the people watching them. Right. Because people are just rabid about these weird little movies that we make, and it's kind of a beautiful thing. Like, we have a community of people that support each other. And you always have people they're gonna shit on what you do, or there's trolls and everything, and there's always toxic people and everything. But I feel like it's few and far between with this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I said, I wouldn't trade this world. It's been a wild ride for me so far. This is why I'm doing this show, is be able to talk to more people in the indie world like yourself, and it's been fantastic. But we are surprisingly close to our time here, and I have some important questions to ask you. Ready for these? The hardest questions of your life.
All right.
What is the most underrated horror IP in your opinion? It could be movie, comic book, franchise.
Underrated. I don't know if this is considered horror or not, but it kind of it's definitely adjacent. But one of my favorite comics of all time was The Max. And which I heard that they're actually trying to make that into a movie.
They are.
Just Godspeed with that. But I've always been a huge fan of Sam Keith. Like everything he's done, I've loved. And his stuff it's not traditional horror in a way, but it's definitely kind of unsettling and weird, and it's just a lot of different genres. But I don't know. That's one that I would have to say is relatively unknown these days. It was pretty big in the 90s, but
Yeah.
I'd love to see that get more recognition for what it was, because that was some heavy stuff for
Yeah.
when it came out.
All right. So flip it. Most overrated horror IP or franchise that you can think that you just go, I understand. I know it's hard for, especially for filmmakers, for me to ask this question because they don't want to shit on someone else's work. But we can say, why the hell is The Conjuring a $2 billion franchise? That's my thought and my co-host's thought.
Not to take the easy way out, but that I feel like the Conjuring universe is kind of very overrated. I like the first Conjuring, and the second Conjuring was okay, but there's like 20 of those movies now, and they just keep getting worse and worse and worse, and they keep getting made. And I don't know, I feel like James Wan, bless his heart, like he started out so strong, and I don't know, like he's been falling flat. I'd like to see him have a resurgence with something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of over those movies.
Yeah, to me at this point in time, they seem just like Hollywood cash grabs. And that's a problem with that franchise as a whole. They're not there for the story. They're not there for the heart. They're not there for the process. I feel.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They get too much money, and they too big, and then they fall.
Yeah, and that's why we need to have independent creators make new stuff. Yeah, there's new Conjuring. Last Rites is coming out October. That's the 10th one, and maybe
I hope it's the last.
maybe more than 3 people will die in this entire franchise with this movie. You know, I was on recorded for Travis Bruce for Horror Realm last night, and we go, you know what we need independent horror creators to take these major franchises and make the next one. We need a found footage Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We need independent artists to take their new takes on this franchise of all franchises and make something new and creative.
Yeah, I think a found footage Friday the 13th would be kind of cool too.
Yeah.
You have a summer camp, bunch of kids got their phones, they're TikToking and shit, whatever they do, and Jason shows up,
Exactly. All right, but with that leads into my question: is if you were given $10 million and said you can work in any horror IP or franchise, what would it be?
Oh, well, besides making a Max movie, somebody asked me this a while back, and I told myself I would think about it, but man, I don't know. I would honestly, I would like to do something new and creative with the Blair Witch Project, but bring back the original cast, because they deserve more recognition for what they did. They deserve more money for what they did. I would like to take that cast and put them in a new movie and just start fresh. It doesn't even have to be Blair Witch Project, but I think those 3 would work really well together in the movie as kind of a fuck you to Lionsgate to finally get the recognition that they deserve for what they did. But other than that, I don't know, maybe a remake of The Gate.
Ooh. Yes, I'm all for
Love that movie. But man,
do you prefer Gate 1 or Gate 2 more?
I don't know if I saw Gate 2, but definitely Gate 1.
Yeah.
The little demon creatures though, like you got to do them perfect, because that was definitely the best part.
Oh yeah, for sure. You can almost have like the Gate versus Puppet Master versus even like the Tooth Fairy creatures from Guillermo del Toro's movie with Tooth Fairy and Katie Holmes as well. Just have the small creature battle.
Yeah, that'd be great.
For All right. Practical or CGI? I know it's a standard. It's a easy question for most people, especially.
Yeah, practical definitely. I know in chess I use CGI, but that was for the lack of no other way to do it, and it was the first time I ever tried CGI, and I'll never do it again. But yeah, practical is the way to go because it stands the test of time. You get a good practical effect. It's not going to look like shit years later. It's gonna stand up, and people appreciate it. You know, there's nothing worse than having a great movie and then they're like, oh, but the CGI ruined it. You know,
Right.
it's like Waterworld. Could have been a great movie, but man, those CGI fish and just it's
Kevin Costner.
yeah. And at the time, you know, people were looking at that like, oh, this looks amazing. This is incredible. But now we look at it and like that is who greenlit this. But you know, you go back to the 70s and 80s and like even the black and white movies of Nosferatu and stuff like that. Like they got so creative with camera angles and the editing of the film and stuff like that, and it just looks amazing. And that's why people still talk about those movies and watch those movies.
Oh yeah. All right. So, any advice, Aaron, for anyone getting into the filmmaking world, especially independent horror?
I think have a good idea, flesh it out, have a good script, and do things to your budget. Like if you want to make your first movie, don't have a bunch of explosions and stuff that you're never going to be able to do. Like go practical, do something simple and out of the box, because when you have to think outside the box, you can come up with some really clever and even creepier things than you would have had with a bigger budget and stuff like that. So I think just just go for it and treat people well. Don't be an asshole, and people will come back. People will want to continue to work with you. Pay people if you can. Don't promise people to stuff and then not deliver it. And be a good person, and things will happen.
Yes. All right. One last question from the chat. What you wished you knew before making your first movie?
That going SAG on your first film is the worst possible thing you can do. And I didn't realize I didn't really need to do that until it was too late. And it was a huge headache and basically tripled my budget. And there's no real, if you already have good actors, like there's ways to get around. If they happen to be SAG, there's ways to get around it. But that's a whole other thing. But like, don't get SAG involved if you have a $10,000-$20,000 budget, because it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I've read some of those contracts for getting SAG people, so I've seen that.
Yeah, and they don't give a shit about anything under $500,000, but they will come after you if you don't pay them.
Right. All right,
So,
you ready for your random horror trivia question?
Let's go for it.
All right. In Nightbreed, Dr. Decker is portrayed by which horror legend?
Oh shit! I haven't seen Nightbreed in so long. Dr. Decker.
Yes, I'll give you a hint. He wore a mask, and he ended up being a serial killer. Does that help?
Wore a mask and ended up being man. I have no idea. I keep thinking Ray Wise because his name was Decker in that Adam Green movie, but I haven't seen Nightbreed in probably 20 years.
So, all right, do you want to know what it is?
Yeah,
David Cronenberg.
Oh shit!
Yeah, one of his few acting. Yeah,
I had no idea.
All right. Well, thank you, Aaron. So before we go, give us your plugins. Where can people follow you, find you, and everything about you?
IFKYfilms.com. is like where I have all my news and everything for Chest and Jeffrey's Hell, any future projects, and you can find my socials on there. That's probably the best one stop for everything. IFKY Films.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Aaron, for joining us tonight. And as always, I've been Graveyard. Thank you for joining us. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to this video, because the more subscribers we get, we're going to give away free horror shit that we want to give away to people. I like working with independent creators and getting stuff and handing it out to people too. So we'll see you next time. Make sure to not get lost in the void.